And we're live. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Blasters and Blades podcast. Thank you for sticking with us through the third season. Hopefully we haven't driven you insane, but if you are, make sure you get the biggest room at the asylum. That's my advice for all of you.
Hey, JR, I noticed something. They didn't hear it, but you actually counted to 3 today without stumbling. Maybe if we get to season 5, you'll actually be able to count that high without stumbling.
Nah, probably not. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just 3 nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. And if you notice, Doc, I almost forgot how to read for a second. And I'm like, where are we? Not like I haven't done that interview 228 times already. But without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Miss Ericka Evren, introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ericka Evren, and I write science fiction, more specifically the subgenre space opera. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you, JR, and thank you for having me, Cisca.
All right, so the next part of the absolutely the next part. Doc likes it when we bring ladies on, so it doesn't feel like so much of a sausage fest because a lot of sci-fi is dudes, and our military connections are all dudes. So sometimes Cisca can feel outnumbered.
Aw.
Outnumbered, not outgunned. Never outgunned.
We tried to do a romance panel for her because, ladies, she's like, no, I'm not that kind of lady. I have no heart. I had it surgically removed.
That's right.
So the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we first found them. So I actually found her when I was stalking the bookish corners of Instagram because I've been trying to branch out to get authors we haven't heard of before that aren't so... just the people in the inner circle I already know, because we've already interviewed all those people. So we were trying to branch out, and I was scrolling through some of the book hashtags on Instagram, and I saw her cover, which we'll get to when we get there. I'm like, this sounds cool. So I went over to her Instagram page, and it's all pictures of glorious, glorious cups of coffee. And I'm like, dude, she's one of us. So we had to have you on.
That's awesome.
The caffeine addict?
Yep, says the caffeine. But Doc, we've got to see if she gets to stay. So you've got to ask her the religion question.
Oh, she gets to stay, but we might get rid of you if you don't like the answers. So,
well, I'm nervous.
Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Star Wars. To be fair, I haven't watched Firefly, and it's on my to-do. I know. I spend my time teaching preschool and writing, so I feel so bad.
Oh, that's a change.
God. I don't know how you do it. You're outnumbered.
Yep.
One preschooler is outnumbering any adult.
And it's better. So they're ages 2 to 3.
What made you decide to be that crazy? I mean, good for you. Someone's got to do it, but
so good, yeah. I just love kids. I love their imagination. I love their fearlessness to be creative. I love their ability to see the good in everything. And I'm a kid myself.
Because a lot of them are like kids.
Yep.
Or deal with the infantry, like you basically described the grunts, like 2 or 3-year-olds.
There we go.
So it works.
I mean, they come up with the funniest.
Oh gosh.
Just nuggets of wisdom, and you're like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, okay, yeah, you're right. And you just don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah. I had one kindergartner say, like, I was telling him about scars and how they leave marks on you. And he's like, I want to be like Thanos.
Oh, get after my own heart.
I know. So funny.
Okay. So, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Conan the Barbarian? I mean, that might give you flashbacks to kindergarten.
It might.
Okay. I haven't read Wheel of Time or seen any episodes. Unfortunately, I'm not a Game of Thrones fan. Couldn't get into it. So I'm going to have to say Conan.
Okay.
Good answer. I grew up on that. That was...
Who doesn't love a barbarian? Come on.
I mean,
or doesn't wish they were one,
man.
Right? Black marks on your face. Come on. Or just punch camels on the head. Like, that's good too.
And we didn't take it too seriously back in the day, so it was just campy fun, and no one pretended that it was, highfalutin.
Yeah, I know, but I still love The Witcher.
Yeah,
I couldn't get into it.
Too bad about Campbell, eh?
I know.
Yeah. Are you Canadian or something, eh?
Yeah, I am.
Wait, really? I was joking. Okay.
No, I am Canadian. Do
So
I sound
the problem.
American? I could talk
Well, in the
south.
beginning, I did. I didn't detect any accent, but the A gave you away.
Oh, because my British.
Doc, I tried to. Yeah, I tried to watch The Witcher, but the way they kept going non-linearly and then bouncing around is just making me dizzy. Trying to track everything, I'm like, I give up. I'm told it's good if you really like the games and stuff, though.
Because wasn't he trying to keep it really close too, and that's why he left because they were veering
Yeah,
away from
was
it.
it?
I think
Cavill
there
is a
were a
pretty big
lot of
nerd.
different reasons, and I think one of them being that apparently he now can be the Emperor of Mankind on Game of Thrones. Not Game of Thrones, sorry, on whatever they end up calling the Warhammer 40K property.
Mm-hmm.
He's the world's hottest Warhammer player.
That's only because I don't play Warhammer.
He'd still be the world's hottest Warhammer player because they are. You can't paint the minis.
This is true.
Well,
I blame it on being colorblind, but I don't have the patience or the hand-eye coordination for that level of minuscule detail.
Yeah.
I tried to say that it was because I had big hands, and Larry Correa was like, "You don't get that excuse because I'm taller than you." Because I met him in person.
Yeah.
He's my favorite midget.
So there's that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, Doc. Now we get into the.
That means
Thanos is the guy who snapped his fingers, and everybody went bye.
No.
But if you could snap your fingers and make people disappear, couldn't you just make more resources up here? Like that just seems to make more sense to me.
Just stop. We're talking about 2 different games. Technically 3 if we started with Warhammer. Stop. JR, you're trying to sound cool and failing. Anyway.
No, I'm not even pretending that I'm cool. I know that. I've got kids. They tell me all the time.
So switching back to our scheduled questions, what was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Definitely sci-fi, yeah.
So what is it that you love about science fiction?
For science fiction, it's definitely just the freedom of what people can do with it. The futuristic aspect to it is very appealing. I also like the other aspect where it's like all aliens or different worlds. I love space and planets, and so that's part of the aspect that I really like for sci-fi. I also just grew up on it. Like my dad was a huge sci-fi action adventure kind of. Yeah, we watched like all the Stargate Atlantis, Stargate SG-1, Star Wars. iRobot. It was all sci-fi. Like, yeah. Lord of the Rings came in a little later, and then as I grew older, I really appreciated it more. I bought the series of books. I still haven't read them, so I'm getting on that. It's on my to-be read. I like the freedom that comes with sci-fi because you're not limited to what we as humans know on Earth and what's like the laws of physics or la la la. Like you can make up anything as long as it's reasonable and seems plausible. So I guess it's like magic.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Did you get into the Stargate universe as well?
Yes, it was really good. It was more thriller, more like drama, but it was still really good. They had really good actors on there. I love that. Yeah. I wish they would have kept going.
Me too.
Can you try holding your mic a little closer to your mouth? I think.
Is that better?
Yes.
Kind of. It was getting a lot of static. Sorry.
Okay. No worries.
So they promised us an ending through the graphic novel, so I bought the graphic novel, and then they left that on a cliffhanger too. The jerks.
Oh, that's awful.
But I did dig it. I know some people hated it for being a little too grimdark BSG, but I don't know. I like the realism.
Universe.
I think I loved it. Was really cool.
It was, and I have all the box sets.
There you go.
So what was your first memory of engaging in speculative fiction as a genre? Was it, watching it with your dad? Was there a certain book?
It was watching Star Wars. I remember loving, what was it? Well, Luke and Vader give me nightmares as kids. Like, I would have dreams of them fighting. Like, oh. But it was definitely watching the old Star Wars. Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely the old Star Wars, all the 4, 5, and 6.
Okay. And since Doc stole one of my questions, I'll ask you the next one. How did your love of speculative fiction and all things nerdy transition into you deciding, you know what, I'm going to tell my own stories?
So when we were younger, like, yeah, obviously we were watching, I was like 13, we were watching all the Stargate Atlantis. We were playing Ratchet and Clank on the PS2. Like, those were the kind of things. And all of a sudden we were kind of, me and my siblings were like, well, why don't we just make our own galaxy and our own characters? Like, we love Ratchet and Clank. We love Stargate Atlantis. So we thought we would create our own kind of characters to go on different adventures. And yeah, I started writing when I was 13. It was a fan fiction of Stargate, I guess, basically. So the first, I don't know, 7 years of my life, I was writing that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, actually, I can't publish this because it's based on other people's stuff, like going through the wormhole and all that thing. So yeah, that's kind of just being exposed, I guess, to those games and movies. And that was just like, hey, I want to write my own stories. I want to tell my own adventures of being in space or encountering aliens. So
Did you ever think of filing this? Did you ever think of filing the serial numbers off and making it your own? Plenty of authors have taken their fan fiction and stripped it and made it their own.
I haven't. Maybe that's a good thing to do because there's like so many versions of it and it's so long. It's probably the longest thing I've ever written.
We interviewed one author, Glenn Stewart. He wrote a book when he was 19, and then he came back to it. Like, I don't know how many years. I'm going to say 20, but if he's younger than that, I apologize to him. And he ended up hiring a co-author to write help him finish the novel because he was too busy. And they said it was like writing with three authors: him, his co-author, and his 19-year-old self. So I imagine you would have that same experience. It'll be you and then your younger self as a co-author when you go through and edit that.
What was I thinking?
or just some of it, as you mature, you'll realize, some of the stuff doesn't quite work as well. Doc, you're about to say something?
I was going to say, I think most authors tend to try and burn their first draft manuscripts live and be like, no, nobody's going to see this.
I published the first thing I wrote.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's my Sleeping Legion series.
Oh, but you're brave. Mind you, you're probably a lot more mature when you wrote it, right? Like,
I'd already been through college.
There you
I
go.
tried to write an epic poem at 13, and it was pure garbage. And luckily, the teacher kept it, so there's no. Well, hopefully, she destroyed it, but I assume she recycled it. So as far as I know, there's no copies floating around. I was just too busy with school and wrestling and sports and stuff to do that until I hit after college, and so I got lucky in that regard. But back to you. So, Doc,
are there any?
Put her in the spotlight.
Blech, shut up, JR. Are there any formidable moments that formed you as a writer?
Let's see. I've never been asked that. That's a really good question. I would have to say, I don't think there has been like one moment. I think it's been kind of like as I matured kind of thing. Every year as I was writing and as I kept to it and as I overcame like, imposter syndrome and all that other stuff that tends to get in the way of people's creative processes. I was comparing myself, beating myself up like I'm not good enough. I would say every year was like a stepping stone to like forming who I am now. So like I didn't take writing my sci-fi very seriously until I was probably, I want to say 22, 23, after I'd written it when I was like 13, 14. So yeah, I want to say it took a couple of years off to mature, and then it was like getting into the world and realizing that, as you said, JR, it is heavily populated by mostly males, and it's very like there's a stigma where girls can't write sci-fi. It's like it's a guy thing, but there's JS dudes. There's a lot of other
Andre Norton, Anne McCaffrey, Elizabeth Moon.
Yeah. So
a lot of women use
through the list. Jodie Lynn Nunn, Jen Koch. I can go through the list of women who write it.
Yeah.
And it's the same reason men use pen names when they write romance. It's because the expectation is such, whether it's right or not.
But maybe ladies would like that.
To be fair, given that most men's idea of romance tends to be far off the mark.
I feel like we exaggerate each other way too much. Like, there's.
I don't know.
Oh,
My
his was the
ex-husband
chiseled chest. La la la.
gave me earplugs for Valentine's Day. He thought it was a very romantic present.
Mm. For him or for you? Like,
I mean,
I'm not sure who it was romantic for, but it wasn't.
If that was something you were struggling with and he was trying to help you, then it could be romantic. It's the intent behind the gesture, and a lot more details needed than just that.
I'm not.
But we're not here to talk about your.
He's like, they're useful and they're a good quality set for when you go to the range, and I'm like,
well, I mean, if guns are your thing, and who doesn't like a good gun? But
maybe he should have took you to the range with flowers and chocolates, and then
see, there that would have been okay. He'd have gotten cool points for that one. But Doc, we're not here to talk about your love life, even though Valentine's Day just passed.
We know I don't have one, so that's okay.
So ask her the fandom question. It's a little different this time because she's a baby author. This is her first book.
She's an amazing author and
She likes coffee, and SGU. She's winning all the cool points.
I know. I really hope she likes pineapple on her pizza.
I do.
Yes!
All right. You just lost a point. Doc, don't corrupt her.
Pineapple pizza.
To corrupt her, she came as a member of the pizza-loving pineapples. Pineapple-loving pizzas. I don't know. Something like that.
Something like that. Pineapples and pizza lovers.
I was up at 4:30 this morning. I don't know. So, but getting into some of the fandom stuff, what milestone as like a new author going out into fandom and these conventions will make you go, oh, that's so cool, I made it?
Oof.
I know, right? It's a hard one. Is it going to be doing your first panel? Your first fan coming up and being like, oh my gosh, it's you.
Yeah, I think it would
be
a total stranger being like, I read your book, I recognize you, like I loved it, or something like that. It would definitely be, I made it. Or if I sold 50 copies on Amazon or something.
So the thing that hurts the most, though, for authors of our era, is you used to be able to, if people were reading, they were reading print copies. So you could potentially be out in public and see people reading. Now everyone's reading e-copies because that's where almost all of the books are sold that way. So in order for you to know they're reading your book, you have to like peer over their shoulder and stuff. And they get weirded out. They call you creepy. It's just a thing. So we'll never get that experience.
People read actual physical books, JR. You just don't get out enough to see it.
Sales numbers don't lie. It's something like 80% of all books are sold as ebooks.
Or, audiobooks, because people are driving. Sometimes they work, they don't have to interact with people. It's just easier to put something on and read. Or if they're doing cardio, like they're putting...
Wait, I thought we just meant tonight. Since I'm the person who goes through about 30 to audio hours of audiobook a week because it's easier than talking to the people at my work. I love the people at my work, but...
Except for Bob. He's listening and he knows who he is. So I'm just making that up.
Bob.
Sure. Bob.
All right, Doc. Move on. We don't want to scare her away.
So, getting into what are the highlights? What have you written so far?
What have I written so far? So, I finished, obviously, my book, Mission of the Rorak.
I love that cover.
Yeah, it's very pretty. I lucked out. It was a pre-made. I was like, I'm buying that one. There we go. Thanks. I've written...
Oh, that is good for a pre-made. Some of the pre-mades are kind of garbage.
I know. But the sad thing is I contacted her and she didn't have anything that was nearly as nice. So it's like, bummer. I've written book 2 for this series. It's currently going out to betas as of tomorrow.
I bet your betas are excited.
I hope so. I'm excited. I'm also working on a lead magnet for like an incentive to sign up to my newsletter. So like a short story novella about a side character in book 2, exploring her story a little bit more. And then what else have I written? I have probably like 5 or 6 other sci-fi ideas that I haven't, I started, but I haven't really fleshed out yet because I've been focusing on this. I'm like a one thing at a time kind of person, which sometimes sucks, but I got at least 5 other stories on the back burner. One is a sci-fi fantasy kind of thing, which inspiration came from a dream. So that one will be interesting right when I get to it. What else am I working on? I think that's it. Between work and coming home, and I just got another cat, so I'm trying to get those two to get along.
What is it with space opera writers and cats? You, Terry Mixon, Cheney, like
they're just
every
so
space opera
chill.
writer I know, you have cats instead of dogs, like decent human beings.
Alien had a cat in it. The new Buzz Lightyear had
True.
a cat in it. Cats in space just coincide. I think it's because we can focus on the story. We don't have to take the dog for a walk. I don't know.
Fair point. Cats tend to be a little bit more.
Yeah, she's like needy.
They tend to be a little bit more forgiving of being ignored.
Yeah. And she just
stares at me.
Yeah.
Don't want it. Most cats don't seem to need as much attention.
Yeah.
So did you get? As my understanding is that to teach preschool in Canada, you have to have a license, which means generally speaking college. So assuming that you went to some form of higher education, did you have any any fiction that was published while you were in school, even if it was just in a student magazine?
No, unfortunately I didn't. We did have to write a short story for children. So we had to choose obviously things that the kids could relate to, use the language they could understand. So it was a nice change to write a children's book. And I still have, I had to draw all the pictures. I typed it all out, printed it, made my own book at home. It's kind of sad looking, but it turned out okay. Unfortunately, no, it didn't get published or anything. It was just for in class. However, I did write a pamphlet that one professor asked if he could use for an example for his next set of students that were coming through. So I thought that was pretty cool. Nice compliment there.
Absolutely. All right. So obviously we are here to talk about the mission of the Roark, since that's what brought us here. But before we dive into that, we're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man. And it is a man this time, Doc, so don't go there. Thank you, Terry, for sponsoring this episode.
Humanity will be free, no matter the cost. Deep in the Guatemalan jungle, buried beneath a forgotten Mayan pyramid, an earth-shattering secret sits, waiting. Its discovery will rip apart the illusion that humanity is alone in the universe. Engaged in a life-and-death struggle for the future of mankind, Harry Rogers and Jess Cook are forced to protect this secret from the most despicable foes imaginable. They must race across the globe to complete Liberty Station, the first true interplanetary ship. Only then can they search for the shocking truth behind what they found. They have no room for error, because failure means death for them and subjugation for everyone else. Presenting Liberty Station, Book 1 of Humanity Unlimited, written by Terry Mixon. Purchase your copy on Amazon and learn more about the author and his works at terrymixon.com.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude.
It is very weird to hear Terry Mixon, after listening to 12 of his books, with that wonderful narrator we just heard, and realizing that Terry Mixon's voice doesn't sound like a female. It's very confusing when I met him.
No, not at all. So
not at all. I'm just so used to her voice.
Yeah. She's nicer than him too. She has better taste in books. But let's dive into the book that brought us here. So where did the premise for the mission of the Roark come from? Like, where'd you get the idea? Was it psychedelics, a Ouija board, overindulging in expired candies?
I wish it was candies. Excuse me.
Well, given where you work, sort of apropos. Just saying.
Yeah. Lots of candies and chocolate from the kids, especially during Christmas. The story for Mission of the Roark came as a need for a beginning story for the main character. Originally, my book 2 was the book 1, and I wanted to write a prequel. And then this story just kind of took off on its own, and I realized that there was more to tell in this story that would outgrow a novella. So I decided to make it the first book, the second, or vice versa. But just the need for, okay, where did this character come from? What's the backstory of his race? Because when I first started writing, what's currently my second book, which was the first. We started with this character, and I was kind of pulling the thread through the whole. I really didn't know who he was. It was sort of discovering him through the story. But then younger me didn't realize that I needed more information to be able to share with readers. And so I had to go back and write this one. So I guess there's a need to explore the character and to set up the series properly is where this kind of idea came from. And it is based off of another galaxy. Like, this has nothing to do with Earth. It is all alien. You know, they're humanoids on their own planet in a different galaxy. So yeah, it's all new, all different, and exciting. Well, I hope people find it exciting.
So does this have you don't even have the Lost Earth legend type thing to tie it? So it's just
its own thing.
Standing alone?
Yeah, it's in the Dexortes galaxy, and that's that.
Okay. So before we get started and dive into the fun stuff, what would the age range of this story be for families that are listening? Because we do have some that listen to the show with their kids.
Yeah, good question. I would definitely say the age range would be early teenager to adult. I do have a warning in the beginning of the book, not for younger audiences. There's not a ton of cussing like you would typically find in a military sci-fi, but there is swear words and more so graphic content, I would say, from the villain and between battles. So, and I guess emotionally too, like there's a lot of, I try to like describe people's emotions as raw and real as possible. So that might upset certain people if they have, say, triggers or something like that. So.
Okay. So you mentioned that you found this cover on the pre-made sites.
Yeah.
And it was a really good one. But what were you looking for when you said, you know what, I really need a cover for this book? What was the thought process on what you were looking for, what you thought would be a perfect fit that led you to this picture?
If you look at other stories in the genre, like they're all a ship on the cover. Like, I know a lot of people do have a person, but all the people I saw that were put on the pre-mades, they looked off, didn't resemble my characters, etc. So I thought, plus I really love blue, so this really caught my eye. I figured a ship would be the safest route to go because ships are, usually if you do describe them in a story, people imagine them a certain way anyhow. So I thought it was a safe route to go. I see now that this ship in particular is used in a lot of other pre-mades because it's a free stock image, but it was overall just the color, the planet, the light shining up from behind it. Like, it just spoke to me, and it was like, I have to have this one. Like, this is perfect. So yeah. Okay. And it was it was late at night when I made the purchase. I came across it and I was like, oh, I have to get that before somebody else does. So I was like,
now that you've found, and that happens with pre-made, sometimes you got to jump, like Tom Edwards, his will disappear in minutes. So yeah, you got to be on the ball when they release the ones you want.
Yeah, I like Tom Edwards. He's got good stuff.
He's just too pricey for me.
Yeah, I know. But now especially in pounds.
Yeah. So now that you have the cover and you're looking for the series, obviously, and you want to link them, do you think you're going to have to redo the book 1 cover just so it's in line with 2 and 3, or are you going to hope they can make something with the same ship?
Well, I've already got the second cover created, and it's a different ship, and that's because we have to find out what happens to the Rorok. So the second ship is a different ship, and follows a different, it's set in many years later after this one. So yeah, don't want to give too much away, but it's a different ship. I did try keeping it with like the ship in the middle, the focus, some planets, try and keep the series in line. So same font, same placement of titles and everything. So yeah, hopefully that looks like a second book when it comes out.
I've learned that we overthink some things and readers don't care as much about those things, but what they won't forgive you is you make the books in a series different sizes.
Oh,
like for the size print, like, you got one that's like, I don't know, one size another, and then they don't line up on their bookshelf, then they're going to go OCD on you.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I've seen some threads. That's mostly, I think, affects trad books, like traditionally published, because they don't have as much control over that. But I have seen some threads where it got hot because they were complaining about the sizing difference. Do you care about that, Doc?
What?
When the books of the
physical book?
Yeah, when the physical books are different sizes, like different heights and stuff.
It used to not bother me, and then Mel went on this huge tirade, and then Jay Boyce did, and next thing I know, I'm noticing it, and it's bothering me, and I blame them.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know.
Well,
I didn't care between paperbacks and hardcovers until it was pointed out to me. So I have Red Rising, the whole series, but Iron Gold is a tall paper, I'm blanking here, hardcover. And the other ones are all perfect, and that one's like, boop. No, now it bothers me, but it's like an expensive book, so I'm not going to go buy it again.
No, I get it. I think I've gotten definitely to the point where as I've gotten more into collecting them, and I think honestly, and that would probably be a really good fireside chat, is the difference between how collecting has changed with ebooks. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm getting it in a print format, I just want it in the same format. I either want it all hardcover or all paperback, and if it's paperback, ideally the same size. I'm not so picky about what the size may be, but yeah, I've definitely gotten more picky about it when I'm buying them and I'm putting them on my shelf. But I'm not like one of those OCD people that you see on TikTok with the color coded shelves.
Oh boy,
or
I wish
the face of every book cover out, and I just want to look at them and I go, you don't have that many books if you're having to do that, or you're not loving all your books equally.
I could color code them for you, Doc.
No, you can't.
Maybe she has it organized in her favorites, not by color.
I have it more complicated than that.
Okay,
no, I'm sorry. She makes fun of me all the time for being colorblind.
I'm not nearly as OCD as I used to be. I used to have them in order by alphabet by author.
Like the library?
But within that, like in a library, but within that, I also had them by order of the series as I read the series, and within the series, it was in order of the setting of the world. I also only had one bookshelf at the time, no child, and a much more time, obviously. And now I'm just happy if they're on the shelf.
Yeah, fair point. But before we go too far afield, you get to ask her the elevator pitch question.
What is your 30-second elevator pitch for this book?
Oh my goodness. I was not ready for this, you guys.
Easiest question. It's the easiest question in the world, but it is also the hardest question in the world.
Well, the blurbs are,
what is the meaning of life?
The blurb's hard enough, and that's only 150 words. So my 30-second pitch would be, this is a story about an underdog person who he's always been beat down in his life. He's trying to find his place in his society. And when he finally gets his dream job, he discovers that there's an underlying scheme happening, and it could threaten his life as he knows it and his planet. So, yeah.
There you go. She did a really good job.
Did I sell you?
Yeah, you actually, I think, kept it under 30 seconds, too. So that's a win.
So space opera is a very big field, but it is also it is so big because there are so many people who write in it, from David Weber to Terry Mixon, Terry Maggart. There's a lot of Terrys now that I'm thinking about it. What is it that really makes your series stand out and special for you?
For me, or hopefully for the reader, it would be that it is completely different from Earth. They're all new aliens, planets, ships, technology, but also that the characters are still relatable and still very human to us. So, yeah, I would just say the thing that stands out the most would be that it's in another galaxy. There's no ties to Earth. So if you really want to get away from the pressures of life or be really distracted, it's nice just to dive into a completely different world and, I don't know, play around in it and see what happens and explore it.
Take a break. See somebody else's problems for once.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess just like Lord of the Rings, different world. different creatures, different setting, like completely immerse yourself and lose yourself in something that's not so human.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
if we talk to JR, he's not so human.
Humanity's overrated.
He went to war, that's why.
I was crazy before, but yeah, we'll go with that answer. All right, Doc, your favoriteest question of all, the one you invented. You ready for this?
I've invented a lot of questions.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So.
She invented a word for it too, so.
Tropolicious?
Yes. See?
Tropolicious is it's not a real word, but she thinks it is.
It is too a word. It has been publicized, and she even used it. It's a word. So,
okay.
Tropolicious. What are your favorite tropes that you're using in this book that you turn and use?
Okay. My favorite tropes would have to be... Well, I don't know. I really tried staying away from them as well. I wanted everything to be completely different. And it's really hard for me sometimes, too, to see a trope within my own writing because I've only recently started reading the last 3 years, like getting back into reading as an adult because I stopped reading when I was younger or whatever. And
most people, I blame college. Most people stop reading in college.
Well, you have so many textbooks to read and they're like so thick and you're that's the last thing you want to do when you get home, right? Let's see. Yeah. I don't know. The only one that sticks out to me would definitely be like the underdog.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known authors who sit there and go, I'm going to take a trope and now I'm going to break the trope.
Yeah. So
which counts.
And too, it's funny, like even some writers, like they wrote their book and they know it, but then when you ask them questions about it, it's like, no, I don't know. So
yeah, it's easier to be on our side of the questions for sure because you ask the questions often enough, you start to sort of remember them. It's different when you have to think. And one thing I've noticed when we've interviewed different authors, you interview them the same questions about the getting to know you because we don't assume that they listen to the other episodes, and you ask them the same 3 questions on 3 different days about like what was their favorite X, and they'll give you 3 different answers. So it's one of those things. It's like, what do I remember first? Today it might be that time I watched Star Wars, and tomorrow it might be something else.
People are part of this culture. They haven't memorized the answer in order to win brownie points.
Right. Right.
And they understand the most important part about fandom. There's no one right answer as long as you're not being a jerk.
That's right.
Absolutely. So we talked about what tropes you use, but which subgenres do you feel like this fits? Obviously space opera, but does it fit any other subgenres?
Yeah, I would say some military. I would definitely say like action and adventure. What else? Gosh, these are the things you look up for KDP, and I haven't done that for a while. Subgenre. It's not cyborg or anything like that. Aliens, definitely aliens. Yeah.
Okay, that's a hearty list. So
it's a heart, military, space opera, aliens, space exploration. I guess that's the boxes that I can tick for that one.
So those are some good boxes. What can you tell us about the main character? You've talked about him a little bit, but can you tell us like about the main character, who he or she is, and what their, I don't know, what would you want the reader to know about them to convince them to buy this book?
So I think our main character, Catrix, is really relatable to a lot of people in that they are trying to fit into society. They're trying to feel like they belong. And for Catrix's circumstances, he is a part of a world that operates on 3 clans. So there's the farmers, the military, and then there's also the creatives. So for him, he's born as a farmer in the farmer clan, and you can switch clans, but for him, when he switched, it's frowned upon because the farmers are like looked down as the lowest of all 3 clans and disregarded as unimportant, even though they feed the whole planet, basically. So when he switched to the military, he gets a lot of constant like backlash from peers in his squad, his commanders. He's not given equal opportunities. He's teased a lot, and he has a short temper, so that gets him into trouble. He ends up like punching a few officers or whatever, and then he's not promoted in any way. He's kind of kept as a grunt, and I think people would like his character because even through all of that, he tries to persevere and do what's best for himself. There's also a personal motive as well, not to give too much away, but it involves his parents and trying to support them, which I think a lot of people can relate to as well. And then he's offered the cream of the crop, the dream job, the one thing he's wanted all his life. And it seems too good to be true. And we have to read the story to find out, is it his dream come true or is it really a trap?
All right, and since we do spoiler-free here, we are going to let you read to find out, and she is not going to tell us the answer to that. Nope. Doc, now the questions are back to you.
Okay, so can you tell us about a secondary character that kind of stands out to you? Because, I mean, books are about more than just one person may be the main character, but you need more than one character in a book.
For sure. I have, two come to mind. I have Tavos, who is a being of pure energy. He's like my favorite thing because he's completely blue and completely limitless and just the coolest thing ever. And then I have a character that is one of Catrix's friends. His name is Mac. And he really stands out for me because he was so fun to write. He's just kind of like this hillbilly, wild, red-haired, wiry character who doesn't give two F's about like what people think about him and how he acts. So he's a wild card. So he's one of my favorite, and definitely Tavos. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. I think sometimes the secondary characters that you love as the author writing the stories and the ones that the readers pick up on are not always the same thing. Mm-hmm. I've had fans reach out. I'm like, I love this character. I'm like, dude got 3 lines. He was in 4 scenes. What are you talking about? But like, I got 12 letters about the guy. So it's sometimes it's surprising once you start getting the reaction from the readers, because obviously this hasn't been out in print for very long, only a couple months at this point. Mm-hmm. I think you published in into September, right?
August. Or no, September. August. You're right. It was a pre-order in August, and then you're right. It's
and so like what you think is going to be, this is the coolest secondary character ever, and everyone's going to be like, or not necessarily, but sometimes people will be like, whatever. But this guy over here, or girl, whatever.
Yeah.
It always amuses me.
Yeah, I really hope people like my villain, because as much as I hate him, I love him too. Like, I don't know. I don't want to spoil it, but he's like the inspiration for Nevo, or Lord Kevlis, was like Bionicle, Grievous, and Venom. So like mashed all those 3 together to create this evil villain. So I hope people like
Venom's kind of an awesome villain. So
that's a unique combination of villains to use as a mashup for your inspiration. What was it about those 3 that spoke to you so much? You're like, I'm going to try to do some of that.
Venom, I really liked, just the idea of the symbiote. Like, he could go from one person to another if he wanted, and that he could, I don't know, there was just a power essence of him. I really liked his wild, scary tongue and teeth and like eyes, and his character was really cool to me. For General Grievous, it was definitely the armor and seeing how delicate he was underneath. Like, you could see all his moving parts and stuff for being a Kalish. And I thought that was really cool. And I also loved his voice and his cough, like that was really part that I liked. And for the Bionicles, I thought it was really cool that they were kind of like the Transformers in a sense, where they're a machine, but they're also alive. That they have these robotic parts that move and just that was part of the appeal for the Bionicles, I guess. And I grew up with the Bionicles, so it's like I was part of the first, I guess, influence I had for a villain.
Okay, that's a good answer. All right, back to you, Doc.
She's chuckling.
What?
I said she's chuckling.
I'm busy laughing at JR. So if your characters found you in a back alley and they knew who you were, how do you think that would go for you?
Why did you put me in such a shitty situation? That's probably what they'd do. They'd probably give me a heck. Why couldn't I have a happy story?
Because nobody wants to read happy stories.
No, part.
I feel like I feel it's old cheesy gangster going dance for me and shooting the bullets at your feet.
Oh, that would be fun too. Yeah.
No, I mean that's like basically what authors and readers do to their characters.
Yeah.
Entertain me, even if you suffer.
Yeah. Part of me hopes that they take me with them on their adventures. Part of me hopes that they would forgive me and just let me go on my way.
So what tech from the adventures would you want to keep since you brought it up? I know, I'm totally messing with JR.
What tech?
And stealing his question. Yeah,
no, you just got to order and then I got to figure stuff out.
I know, it's fun to make you squirm.
So what kind of science and tech can we expect from your books?
There's definitely ships that travel with a hyperdrive kind of jump deal. There's shields, there's weapons. What else is really unique about it? Holograms, and then the main race that I have, their DNA only works with their technology, so it's kind of like a secret key for them. It's not really something that I expound on in the book because it's like common knowledge to them, but I'm hoping to sprinkle that into later books too to make it interesting. And what else? Just
so you leaned into the.
Oh, I forgot the best part. Sorry. So obviously influenced by Stargate, but I have my own gate system in my galaxy, but it's not a gate. It's kind of like it's a round platform, and then it has arches on the top, and they like open and close, and then you can have like a wormhole inside, or it can open up and expand the energy out and like swallow smaller ships that way and send them on their way. And I call that the arc cross. Arc cross. So it's like arc and then you're crossing. So a mix of those two words, arc cross.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with leaning into the classics that everyone expects. I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Sometimes glasses are just glasses. You don't need to give it a fancy name with 12 apostrophes in it.
Yeah.
So of all the tech that you invented in this world and that you brought to light, which would you want for your daily use?
Ooh, the arc cross, because then I could go wherever I wanted and not need a plane. Bye-bye tickets, no more expensive money. I can go to the tropics whenever, providing there's one on the other end. I'd have to probably create a few hundred, but yeah.
So you have to have one at the receiving end as well?
Yeah, I like Stargate, so it has to connect.
Okay. So Doc likes to know, because she's got the criminal element going on in her brain. Once you had that arc cross, like how would you abuse that tech now that you have it every day?
You would definitely abuse it in the sense that you could, if you have control of it, you can starve out people. You could control their planet. You can hinder their trade, basically their way of living. Like if that's what they use to get to other. So kind of like our world, how we send ships back and forth to other continents and get all those goods. Like if you were to cut that off, essentially, like you'd starve that planet of their livelihood, of their business, of their trade. Like, yeah, and then you could, and if you did take it over, you could control the whole galaxy because you could stop people from traveling where they need to go and really like clamp down, and you'd be miserable with it. So.
Okay. So how hard into the science do you lean? Do you try to explain everything, or do you just take it like the classics of space opera? It's just there and it works. Move on.
Well, over-explaining is never really good. I used to really go into over-explaining because I myself found it really fascinating. And then I learned to kind of incorporate how it works and what it is through dialogue. So when Catrix steps through it for the first time, or like however many times he does it, like I try to explain what it feels like, what sensation he's getting, what he thinks about it, kind of thing. And then like when he's stepping off of it, just kind of small details that will create an image for the reader, but that I'm not going too far in that they forget where Catrix is going or what he's doing. Like I try and keep it so they're staying with the character, what he's seeing, what he's doing, and he's not going to go off and explain how the R-Cross works. So just filtering everything through his preference or his POV there, like what he sees and what he experiences is what the reader gets. So yeah, I try not to go too crazy into the explanations because I think readers get bored and they just want to know what happens next.
And the other part of that is, depending on your point of view, character changes a lot. Like, I know plenty of people who drive a car but couldn't tell you how an internal combustion engine works or what their pistons are doing. Yep. So it makes sense, from a life perspective, that if you pick the right character, you don't have to show that because that character doesn't know either.
That's right.
So is this written in first person or third person?
Third person.
Okay. So we like to sometimes look behind the curtains of these novels. So were there any cool scenes that you had to cut from the final book that you might use later?
Funny enough, I had cut a scene, but my editor, I sent it to her as well, and she's like, no, you definitely need to keep this because it really helps people understand K-Trix a little bit more and create a connection with him. So I had cut a scene. It wasn't super cool, but it was really important to him as a character. So it's in there. No, there wouldn't be any other scenes that I really cut that were cool or that I found I wanted to keep in there. I tried writing as succinct as possible. Whatever I put in there had a purpose. And for this other scene, I thought maybe I was going off track a little bit with the story, but she assured me that it was good and it fit, so I put it back in.
Okay. So we know the mission of the Roark is part of a series because it says so on the Amazon page. I looked. There's currently one book out. You mentioned the second book is going out to your beta readers.
Yes.
Yes. What can we expect? Is this going to be a trilogy? Do you know how long you think the series is going to be? Like, what's next?
Definitely a trilogy. I don't want to push a story if there's no story to tell. So I know there's at least one more book, if not two, to tell after the second one. But we'll see what happens at the end of the third because I haven't written it yet. I'm just finishing the second. So I'll let you know when I know. Definitely a trilogy.
That's an acceptable answer.
Yeah.
No, I like that because I think fans can also get very intimidated and exhausted going and looking at something and saying there's 30 books to get a resolution. That can be a lot of commitment.
Mm-hmm.
It can't. Yeah. Sometimes it's a hard to know where to start too if they don't organize it as well. When they have a bunch of side series as well, like when I have to get a PhD in reading orders to figure out your universe, probably not. I mean, I don't mind jumping on a series like that from the beginning, unless you produce 1 billion episodes or books in 1 year, and then I just can't afford you. But I think later on it gets harder for new people to get in. I think when you go too long.
Yeah, definitely. Unless you write each book in a way that it can be read by itself, and then people can go back and if you write it as a standalone, but it still connects the books in a way.
Mm-hmm.
If you write episodic.
Yeah, authors do that quite a bit, and that's kind of nice because then if anybody picks up that particular book, they're not completely lost because that causes a lot of confusion and frustration and what the heck's happening?
It can.
Yeah, so for Red Rising, you really have to start with the first book and keep going because Darrow's character keeps evolving in each one, and you don't know his history and what the importance of it unless you read the first one.
Yeah, and some great ones can balance it. Louise McMaster-Bujold, her Miles Verkosigan saga did a really good job of balancing it, where you got to build if you read them in order, but if you didn't read them in order, you still got an enjoyable book.
Yeah.
So did you write... Oh, go ahead, Doc.
I was going to ask about the aliens.
No, I was going to ask her, since we were talking about episodic, did you write this series episodic, or did you write it sort of flowing from one into the other?
I want to say it's flowing from one into the other because I did a no-no and I made Mission of the Roark a cliffhanger.
So you are now a member of the Cliffhangering Bastard Society.
Yes, and I know readers don't particularly like it, but it really suited the story and how to end it and how to start with what I'd already written for book 2. For the third book, I feel like it will be more episodic, yeah. But also on the other hand, it'll make more sense if you read them in order. So I can't please both sides of the spectrum, so I'm just doing what works for the story, I guess.
That's an acceptable answer. All right, Doc, now that I interrupted you, now you can ask about aliens.
Okay.
She puts up with me because she loves me.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, I love you like a root canal or a foster brother. But your mom likes me better than you, so it all works out. So, but you said aliens. So how many aliens do you have in your series? Like lots or little?
I have so many that I had to take lots out.
Okay, so when you create these aliens, are you doing them purpose built? Are you like, I need a guy that does this? Or are you just kind of like, are you driven by science or need?
It's more like driven by want and what I like. So when I first started drawing, like obviously I mentioned like Ratchet and Clank and those things kind of inspiring us. I drew characters. One was really highly based off of a jaguar because I loved jaguars at the time. His characters evolved from that to look more alien as it goes, but it was more of a culmination of like, I really like this, I'm going to draw that. And then I had all these species and stuff and aliens. And then as I was writing it, I was like, I need this. And then, oh, who do I pick from? And then I would just pick one that kind of suited and like put them in that spot. So it was really just, I had a bunch of material. And then as I was writing, it was like, oh, or like, you know, if you need a name, like you have all these made up names, it's like, I need a name for something. You
just slotted them in as it made sense then. That's a great way of doing that.
It was just so much easier that way to have like what they looked like all the backstory I had fleshed out and stuff. And then I was just like, I need somebody to do this or to look like that. And sometimes when I'm in like a spaceport or whatever, I'll just make them up on the fly because they're passing by. You don't need very much information, but I try and make it interesting for if I ever have to go back and like have somebody draw what they would look like. So fair. Yeah, but I have so many and like creatures galore, like so many alien species that are animals, like crazy amount. So if I was a better artist, I'd have more art on my page, but I'm just starting to learn digital.
I can draw stick figures. That's got to count for something.
It's something. It's a representation.
I actually had an art teacher in school that told me I was colorblind, so art wasn't for me and I should just give up. And I listened to him because he knew what he was talking about, right? So I learned other hobbies instead. No, probably not. I talked to an artist once at the one con I went to. He's like, we should flog that teacher. You don't tell kids that. But anyway, right. I found other passions. So now I make art with words. But clearly this interview is winding down. But before we let you go, was there anything about the mission of the Roark or the Arcarian series that we didn't ask that you want to tell us before we wrap this up?
No, you guys were really thorough. Asked a lot of great questions and I really enjoyed the interview, so thank you so much for having me.
It has been a lot of fun, but Doc likes like you said, she likes mixing it up with people, so we've been trying to find people that won't put her to sleep. So
I mean, JR does put me to sleep.
You have fallen asleep on our conversations before, so. But before we let you go, dear listeners, it's like she's like the sister I already had 2 of and I didn't want more of.
But I already had anyway. 2 brothers and I didn't need more, but I got you. Anyway.
So it works.
Love-hate relationship.
So, right. More like a love-like-that relationship.
It's our love language. It's bickering. Right. So before we let you go, dear listener, we'd like to harken back to our old exit and remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book, so do your part. And this is especially important. We're new authors who have to learn to tweak the algorithm because she's so new. She has no other products for Amazon to learn from. So go buy it, read it, and do your part and leave her glowing reviews about how much you liked it. And if you didn't like it, send it to her in an email instead. Send it as an email instead. Okay, I'm not telling you to lie, but you know what I'm saying, people.
I need honest feedback.
No, constructive feedback. Constructive feedback. Always go with constructive.
So can you tell Ericka, I'm going to remind you, her name is Ericka Evren. So if you're looking for her on the Amazons, Ericka, can you tell listeners how they could find you? And obviously it'll all be in the show notes.
Yeah, you can find me. Quickest thing is my website. So that's Ericka Evren. So ErickaEvren at .com. So Ericka Evren. And then I have links there to lead you to all my other things. So yeah. And I'm most active on Instagram. So if you want to pop in and see more pictures or more personal stories or anything like that, you can definitely find me.
Or coffee.
There. Or coffee.
So since we talked about it, how do you drink your coffee and what's your favorite?
Okay.
And then we got to bring this home because Doc's going to fall asleep on us.
I'm a weirdo. I like medium roast coffee. I like different flavors.
Okay.
I can't drink the same flavor over and over and over. So sometimes I mix it. I'll have one brand of this, one brand of that, depending how I feel. Each day I have to have a different cup because I'm in a different mood each day. And
That's
instead
fair.
of milk, I drink soy milk. And then I have a little bit, like maybe a teaspoon, not a whole teaspoon, a quarter of a teaspoon of sugar.
Okay. That's acceptable. And, people have dairy allergies, so I get it.
What's that?
Bones Coffee. I really like their flavored coffee because a lot of times you can get them and they're like, it's hazelnut. We swear. And you're like, where's the hazelnut?
Right.
Try Bones. They have a lot of funky different ones. So I have a friend who just retired from the Navy. I used to send them coffee, like their flavors samplers all the time.
Bones. Okay, I'll write it down.
Because at 2:00 in the morning, anybody will drink Fruit Loop flavored coffee.
I'm morbidly curious now. We'll have to talk after the show about that. But so as far as coffee goes, if you can't have the dairy, but you're looking for the cream, having been a barista to pay for my degrees, oat milk, people say that tastes a lot better in the coffee. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
might be worth
I'm
trying.
not a fan. I like the soy.
No,
better.
okay.
It's creamier, but I've tried the oat. It could be just the brand I'm trying to. Like, we have the brand here in Canada, Silk.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite enjoy it. It didn't. I feel like it didn't cream my coffee as much as I wanted. So I'm trying soy.
Chobani makes a really good non-dairy creamer.
I'll have to look at it.
FYI, because they're a yogurt company, so I would not think to try them.
Right.
So how do you make your coffee? Do you do a drip, a French press, Keurig?
It's a drip, but I would like to get like an old coffee percolator kind because I love that.
I've been looking for one of those too.
Campfire coffee's the best. I think we're just gonna have to go buy one from the camp store and like just do it on my stove because every other percolator one I see, people are like, it doesn't work or the glass top breaks, and I was like, oh. So can't go wrong with campfire coffee.
Absolutely. All right. And since we talked about how to find her, now we will tell you how to find us, dear listener. We are over on the Twitters at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. We will give a free imaginary coin to whoever can figure out what the SF stands for. We'll see how bright our audience is. You can email us at the Blasters and Blades podcast at gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook where all the shenanigans happen at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. That is where we are most active. Although we do have a Facebook page, we do not have enough followers yet for an independent URL. So do your part, people, and we'll get one. Then it'll be Blasters and Blades podcast. We have a website at anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, where you can also support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. These podcasts don't pay for themselves. Or you can support the show more directly over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast. And I promise I will keep my co-hosts, Doc Cisca and Nick Garber, duly caffeinated. They will drink until their bladder explodes.
Pretty much.
But that's just another day, right? For you, that's just Tuesday, Doc?
Exploding things? Nah, I do those only on days ending in Y.
Okay. All right, bring us home, Doc.
Every day.
See, she got it. She's smart. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For the absentee Nick Garber, the Addlebrain JR, I am Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. Join us next time where we indulge our love of cheesy jokes, nerd culture, and all things that torture JR, and most especially and assuredly pineapple on pizza.
Yeah.
Heathen.